That's an owl out there. I don't know. I never seen it, but it's out there. It's been out there since I've been over here. I hear it, all the time, and it's woo woo woo. And then my cat normally runs to the window and look for it, and I'm keep telling he be trying to climb out that window too, and I live in the sky, so and I'm letting him know, dog, you don't want to go out there, because my cat is a house cat. He never been out there and interacted with the real world, so this is the only reality that he knows. So I tell him, like, son, you don't want no problems with no owls, especially like those big owls that Big Boy, like from Outkast, he has owls, and those owls, you know they eat house cats, or other kind of creatures like that. Let me see if I can even pull it up. But I was just scrolling, Facebook. This is what we do on a day-to-day basis. Especially when this is something that's put in front of us. You know what I mean? Stop retreating your colonizer sympathy. You'll get some good stuff on here, and you also get, like I said, some negative stuff on here. I guess this is like a fight or something that transpired. I'm not sure, but this is normally what's captured and broadcast to the people. So you see in my background there's Pac-Man. It's Pac-Man in the background, and while we see the physical game, we don't look at the spiritual aspect of the game. This is why I say you have to have spiritual eyes and spiritual ears. You have to see things spiritually and hear things spiritually, so you can get a spiritual understanding of certain things. Especially with when it comes to religion. Religion is important to a people because it's something that they can base their understanding of life and their reality on. And then there's also people that's important, as far as God. When you have prophets or people that have divine insight and divine knowledge, they're not to be looked at as one to glorify, but they're there to give you, that wisdom and that knowledge. And there's a reality in certain dimensions that we 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 go in and out of. And in one reality, I've seen, an image be created by a person. The person created the image, and then the image was owned by someone because they had access to the people. They had an access of a way of putting the image out. So the person tried to disassociate himself with the image, and by doing so, the people who had the outlet for the image became the owners of the image, even though the person behind the image was no longer associated with it. They assumed the role of that particular image, and the image became bigger than the person that actually created the image. It became so big that it became like a worldwide phenomenon, and it was completely disassociated from the actual creator. And that is, in a sense, the way that we are with when it comes to God, and the teachings of even teachings of Christ. You can be so caught up with um, idolizing the image, and you forget, where the image actually came from, and have no reverence or no kind of um, appreciation for the author of the image. So this is when you get into like image worshiping and idolatry. You'll idolize the creation and won't even give any kind of acknowledgement to the creator. But this is one thing that I've seen in another dimension, in another reality, where, that was, actually relative to what you can see in, a religious aspect. The religion becomes even greater than, the God that it worships. And, I seen, the other day, Farrakhan made a statement, you know, relating to, I believe, Easter, when he said that, Christ died on Friday and he was risen on Sunday. And he was trying to, I guess, throw stones at, people that believed in, Christ and the resurrection of Christ. He was trying to mock or, ridicule the people that believe that, because he was saying that there's no way that it was 3 days, that didn't constitute 3 days. So we have to be mindful of what we state publicly, what we declare and state, in a manner that can be seen and affect people, because of, our eye gates and our ear gates is always open, and we're always open to receive certain knowledge and wisdom. So, I seen that, and I said, he made statements before, in agreement with Christ, in agreement in certain teachings of Christ. And, why would they depict him in this negative light, where he's also abashing or trying to discredit, people, or this belief system, when, religion is only a belief system, that there's people that adhere to those principles, and there's some that, shun them. To those that shun them or are not receptive to them, that's their prerogative. But to people who have a strong foundation in these religions and they believe it wholeheartedly, then you shouldn't attack them. Because I believe that I stated in the video where I was talking about the Holy Bible and how the Masons have their own version of the Bible. They were saying that religion, not just any religion, but all religions, have to be, viewed in a certain light, where it's respected. You have to have respect for religion. And in that same breath, I want to say that, the Freemasons had acknowledged Farrakhan and gave him some sort of accolades and some sort of honorary, I don't know, membership or whatever, but they have some sort of association with him for, I guess, his works, I guess, community wise or just religious wise. But when it comes to, destroying or trying to downplay other people's religion, you can't find any kind of or take part or find any kind of enjoyment in doing such things, because in the same sense that would happen to your religions or your beliefs, because there was a statement made by a person, and I'm not sure if it's on this account, but I believe that I told him that, he should remove his comment, because it created a certain Let me see if it's here. Yeah, there it goes right here. You know, and he was stating certain things.
White, peace to be Allah. Let him do what he gonna do, bro. Allah got to deal with
and I believe because this guy was stating something about Allah, and you know, Charleston White normally picks on people and says a lot of things that are, you know, anger provoking, especially when it comes to, you know, public figures or people that have a certain influence, and he's one that he capitalizes off of stirring up strife, you know, or discord amongst brethren. You know, some things he may say in a manner that that you know, you would take it, you know, as, you know, good wisdom. Then he'll say things that are meant to, you know, provoke anger, you know. But I wanted to see, you know, if I could pull this up here, you know. But this guy, he was stating certain things, you know, and you know, that created a lot of people reaction to him. You know, he put himself in a hot seat. So what I told him was, you know, he should just remove that comment. If he removed this comment, all the comments that came after it, you know, all the comments that came from that, it would also be removed as well, you know. You know, I told him just remove the comment for the sake of peace and righteousness. Just, you know, some things you just have to keep, you know, to yourself for the sake of peace and righteousness, you know, for righteous sake. You know, you don't, you know, seek to, you know, upset or offend people that have, you know, maybe have an upbringing in it or have a strong connection with it, because, you know, this may be something that, you know, saved their life at a time when they was going through certain spiritual wars. They had to you know, find something that they could find some sort of refuge in and seek shelter from their attacks. So it could be, you know, either Christianity, it could even be Islam, but it's something that people use to, you know, deal with certain moral issues that they may have. They may have an addiction. They may have some sort of hardship that they are encountering. Anything, but these outlets have been used as been resources for people to seek some sort of comfort in. So you can't demonize the this religion or that religion, you know. So this is one thing that I wanted to point out, because, you know, you've seen Farrakhan, you know, stating certain things about, you know, Christ, and there's people that wholeheartedly actually, you know, that I encountered his young brother, you know, not too long ago, and he really believed wholeheartedly in the story. And it's not for you to tell him, you know, don't believe that, or don't, you know, that's not true, or don't, it's not up for you to do that. It's not, you know, these are some things that if, you know, you are to come into the reality of what things are spiritually, then it's on your timing. You know, it's up to you to come into, you know, the reality of it, you know, not for you to be the one that be the bearer of bad news or bad spirits, you know. But he wanted to know, like, all he asked was, where did he lie at? You might not, you might be telling the truth, but you're telling the truth from, you know, from a different perspective, you know, from another perspective, not as a form of enlightening others, but a way to, you know, convey hate and to sow discord amongst people, which this is actually what this is. This is a brother, Big U has had some, run-ins with artists, and he's been, accused of extorting people or pushing his weight around because he's associated with a certain street gang. Then you have Charleston White, who has become, a public figure by, stating certain things that, are anger provoking and maybe thought provoking, but I'm not sure. But after a while, you just stop paying attention to them. But this was just a comment that I seen, and I seen that they was talking about, Islam, and a lot of people was being offended by what he was saying. And what I told him was, I said, not saying that you are, because what he tried to say was that, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was married to a young lady. I believe, I want to say it was Aisha, but she was young, and he married her at a young age, which today would constitute someone as under the line of pedophilia. So he was using that to classify him as that. And to people that that protect Islam with their life, and are taught that they have to defend it like that, they would jump to defend that particular religion. They would defend it, and even at the expense of making it their duty to physically or to approach him personally. And this is one thing that you don't really want, just because you feel the need to state certain things that you've learned. But I told him, for the sake of peace and righteousness, we have other means of making our understanding understood. So, just removing this comment is an example of how easy it is to remove negativity amongst us and everything that comes along with it. Also inform them that negativity is always used against us. Our role in this world is instructive, not destructive. We are constructive. We build things. The negative aspect, which is our reptilian brain, destroys things. We have to tame that part of our brain pattern. Religion binds us to that habit. Habit is part of our lower brain function. We have to get out of the habit of being used against each other. We have to get out of the habit of being used against us. And that's with any and everything. Things are being used against us. This is why, you see the Pac-man in the background, is because you come to realize that, it's not just a game, it's a program. It's a program, and the program is for you to assimilate and to be controlled. So you have Pac-Man, which is, program, assimilate, and control man. These are things that, if you were to look at it from another perspective, you would understand that concept. You program and control man through assimilating. You can put them inside of assimilation, which would be a maze. And as you're in that maze, you have a need to accumulate things, which would be under the guise of greed. And as you're under this greed, you're on a constant run from something. Either that is fear, faith, love, or hate, which would be, the four ghosts would represent that. It would be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. These are things that you can do inside that game. Once you obtain a certain power, you're able to, ward off those four things. You're able to control that now, because you have a certain power, and that certain power makes those things flee from you. So you're placed inside of an assimilation, which it becomes a maze. And that is what you see on these particular platforms, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. It's all a form of, putting a certain people inside of a certain maze, in a maze with information, you know, in a maze of information, and that information is not just something that's um, subjected to a particular individual, but to all individuals alike. So you have to assimilate to it, and that assimilation is part of being programmed. And once you're programmed, you can be controlled. So you're in a constant um, quest for accumulating money, accumulating food, accumulating fame, accumulating some sort of thing inside of this program. And that is something that we have to look at spiritually, and how do we get out of that maze, because every stage of the maze becomes harder and harder, and the things that you're up against becomes more advanced. Every level there's a new devil. With that stage, every maze has a new and more powerful adversary. So that's one thing that I've seen. Just looking at it from a different perspective, that we are being programmed and controlled by the things that we are seeing, that we are seeing on a daily basis. And that's something that collectively we can take note of. But at the same time, we have people that's inside of these assimilations, that are a part of the assimilations, that want to keep you in the assimilation, and that is part of their job, is to keep you on or stuck in a certain maze in a program. So I've seen a person in a big audience of people, and he was stating that black people, or people in particular, they were actually doing good, and they was against the establishment, but the establishment wouldn't allow you to have that sort of impact and influence on a people and be so vocal and brazen about it. That means that there's people that's still a part of the establishment, and that establishment creates people that have a rebellious spirit for a rebellious people, but they're actually still a part of the establishment, and they're just there to gear towards being a mouthpiece for those people, so that they actually don't understand their captivity is still being controlled by the establishment. So that is one thing that I witness, and this is not anything that's far-fetched, or that is unheard of, because we've seen that with Fred Hampton. We've seen that with in the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. They create agents, and they put them amongst you as a part of you, and they have the ability to appeal to you. And once they appeal to you, you are able to follow them. You follow the people's lead that are leading you. And when you're dealing with a people, we have a sheep-like nature. Even biblically, we are referred to as sheep. When Christ referred to himself as the good shepherd, and the good shepherd that lays down his life for the sheep, that's how you determine who's the good sheep. Then you have other shepherds that are hired hands, and they really don't care for the sheep. But in order for you to be a shepherd, you have to have some sort of leadership. And there's people with leadership that are actually hired hands and really don't care nothing about the people that they are leading. This is why you have false leaders, and you'll have false prophets, you'll have false teachers, you'll have false people that's in the forefront of the masses, because we do have what you call a sheep like nature. Is biblical. God is one that, if you wanted to get into it, biblically. You know, so even this is the AI overview, of that. God refers to people as sheep. Yes, the Bible uses the metaphor of sheep and shepherds to describe God's relationship with his people. This imagery is used to highlight God's role as a caring provider and protector, and to depict humanity's need for guidance and direction. So humanity is always going to have a guide and a need for direction. And it's just unfortunate that, there's people that play on that necessity for guidance and direction. So what you'll have is, people assuming roles of, religious figures and political leaders and gang leaders and all sorts of leadership roles, but they do not have leadership quality. They don't have leadership quality, and this is the reason why you are given people with divine insight and divine knowledge, not for them to be leaders, but for them to give you righteous and sound and guidance and direction. So the Psalm famously depicts God as the shepherd and people as sheep, emphasizing God's care and protection. Jesus as the good shepherd. In the New Testament, Jesus uses the same imagery, declaring himself the good shepherd who knows his sheep and lays down his life for them. Sheep as a symbol of need and independence. The comparison highlights the idea that people, like sheep, are vulnerable and need a shepherd to guide them and provide for them. The good shepherd and the lost sheep. The image of the shepherd searching for and bringing back the lost sheep emphasizes God's compassion and desire to lead people back to him. So there you have that. It's a necessity that people need to be brought back to the truth of God, because they have the ability to be lost sheep. And if a sheep is lost, they're not lost alone. They're scattered amongst different regions, and as they are sheep, they're always in packs, and that sheep follows the sheep that's in front of the sheep that's leading. The sheep that's leading is the one that the sheep follow. So if they're being led by something that's not good, the sheep that's following that sheep would be following something that's not good. So there's a necessity for a people to be brought back to what's good and what's pleasing. So this is the reason why you'll have people that comes into this world with certain knowledge and certain wisdom, to help guide back a people. And there's people that benefit on the fact that sheep are lost, and they can give you wisdom that is not really divine, and have you under the impression that you're dealing with divine wisdom. Because what I've seen recently is a lot of stuff that I say, which comes from a divine area. It comes from a divine area, because even me, some things that I know, I'm really not sure how I know them. But after I know them and then I go and check them, I understand that, this was given to me, for a particular reason. And that reason is to, give to people not for me to harbor for myself and keep for myself, but to actually give people that need guidance. And after I put it out, it's restricted. I know it's restricted to who can see it and what's being seen. And then I see that same thing quoted word for word by other people, and these people are actually like cult like people, and they wear their crystals and stuff like that, and they keep themselves in a certain arena where they're given some sort of wisdom, but it's kind of like they don't really understand the wisdom that they have. It's just something that's recycled. And I just recently seen that somebody just quoted something that I stated word for word, and they're in a cult. And like I said, that same cult, my cousin was like I know who I know all of them. I know everybody that's in it because they all talk the same thing. They all say the same thing. And like I said, if they was a part of me, they would definitely tap in and check in with me or say, yo, you got to come over here, Yoshi, you come over here. But I see that they're trying to make me outcasted or neglected, but that doesn't offend me. And you would want people to get that wisdom. You would want them to get wisdom. I'm not going to sit back and, man, they stole my stuff, man, they keep stealing. I don't care. You want people to get it, but it doesn't come from the same generous or from a form of generosity. These people capitalize off these things, and that there's capitalization going on, especially on Facebook. When there's a people that 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 create content, and if they was to show you videos, this is the GDs, these are men that still, active in, the GDs and, boss brother of the struggle. If I could show you them, you would actually see like this dude, like these particular people, these are people that you would see regurgitating, like the person stated on my page. They just make videos that's already out and put themselves in there, and when they do, they capitalize off of these videos that's already out. They get a platform, and that platform picks up more traction as they regurgitate videos, and they make a lucrative income. It's real lucrative. I saw this one woman just sit on her bed and show a post of what's this guy, Terrence Howard, and she was just pointing at it, and that thing had got like 5 million views, and 5 million views on Facebook. That's probably like at least $5,000, or it could be more. Who knows? But I don't really know. But your whole purpose when you are giving out information, wisdom, knowledge, whatever, is not to capitalize. It's for people to capitalize off of it in a spiritual or moral sense. But there's people that really don't care. They just share stuff, and put themselves in there, and they make videos, they boxing, and You know, you know what I mean? But you know, you know, it's always there's always these things. You know, it's a viral thing. You know, people don't care about. Not saying they don't care. You know, look at it. You know, people just capture things with the intentions of going viral because the viral creates or generates the income. So we sidestep the necessity for us to um, be instructive, and at the expense of destruction would seek to go viral. That's why I try to tell them we're supposed to be instructive and constructive, not destructive. Sometimes the way that we instruct people have more of a destructive effect than a constructive effect, and that is adverse to the role that we have here in this reality. It's the reason why nothing is being constructed. It's because the people that construct are being destructive, and you know, you know, and that's something that you wanted to point out as well. And again, with it instructive, what are we instructing people about? What is the new things that people are embracing? There's something that I wanted to understand about this thing called nine ether. It's called nine ether, and I was wondering what do they mean by nine ether, because there's a whole. If you was to look it up, if you was to look, nine ether, nine ether being, you would see, a lot of people, especially, people that, put on certain garb, you know, I could easily check this out and get an understanding of it, but why would you, if you've never been given that, in a divine sense, God telling you certain things divinely. But what I do understand is that ether is things of, our existence, of this particular reality. Now, nine ether, I'm not sure what it would pertain to. Some people would like to sound deep and say deep things because, like I said, some people play on the intelligent emotions of others. And, nine ether, you would say nine ethers because you're talking about plural as opposed to singular. So it's nine ethers, you know, a being of nine ethers, maybe. But no, you may be getting nine confused with non-ether. Non-ether being, a non-ether being would be considered a light being, a being of light, which would be non-ether because light isn't doesn't need the medium of any kind of physical object to be delivered or travel in. Darkness as well doesn't need it. So darkness and light and sound would be non-ether. That goes back to the five elements. Ether would be amongst the five element, which would be a solid, liquid, gas, and a vapor. These are things that comprised of matter. These things in the fifth element. The fifth element would be ether. Ether would be the fifth element, and ether is what things which would you call the things that everything is concealed inside of, which would be like oxygen, and this oxygen would be a form of our consciousness. This consciousness that we are living in. So would you say non-ether or is it non-ether? Because we have the tendency to mix or mince words and get them mixed up. When we had the word wretched, and then when you heard it said in a southern way, ratchet, people started to say ratchet and give it a whole nother meaning. Saying ratchet was, being a certain kind of way, which it is, but it's actually the word wretched, like in The Wretched of the Earth, with the book Franz Fanon had wrote. If you ever read that, or if you ever came across it, exactly, what it is, The Wretched of the Earth. Yeah, Wretched of the Earth, you know, that particular book, by Franz Fanon. And it's these things could be misconstrued by the way that it's pronounced. So if you were saying that we are non-ether beings, non-ether beings, that means that you are either a being of light or a being of darkness. And not only that, but also sound has been proven to be non-ether, because you really don't need anything for sound to be concealed inside of. So the sound can exist in the ether without the necessity to have any kind of physical body, without needing anything, because it's of a wave. And then you have light waves, and you have darkness, which doesn't need a container as well. But if we close our eyes, we see darkness. If we open our mouth, we create sound. If we open our eyes, we see light. So these things can consist of what it means to be non-ether, because of the necessity or the ability for us to have those things within us, to have non-ether things emitting out of us and inside of us, which would be darkness, which would be light, and which would be sound, which are all non-ether, non-ether, so but like I said, you have wretched and you have ratchet, which is what wretched is, but is pronounced by with a southern thing. I've heard one of my supervisors, when I was a teenager, I worked at Crystals, and I remember him saying, his name was Bryce. I remember him saying, that's ratchet. You know what I mean? Ratchet. But I knew that he said wretched. And this was when I was 15. And I worked at Crystals, and I remember him saying that ratchet, and I remember Bryce. He was a Freemason too. He had the Masonic coin, and he used to like say certain things to be like sly. But he was pretty cool. He was pretty cool. But I remember him. Yep, Bryce. And so there's shepherdship, and there's people that's being programmed inside of an assimilation, and they are being controlled by what they see and what they hear. If, like, this is a prime example. If I did not see certain things, I wouldn't be able to speak about them. So what we see and what we hear has an effect on our reality. And if it did not, then you wouldn't be one that made a video about this certain thing. And now you have a lot of people going into the thing with Jadakiss, talking about his street credibility. But recently I seen something stated by Jadakiss, that was kind of let me see. It was so we get caught up in thinking that we would have to have some sort of street wisdom in order for us to navigate in this world. But the thing is, it's better to not have it, because now you're not, privy to certain fundamental principles of the street. You don't need them, because these things was imposed on a people and makes a people think and react a certain kind of way. So you shouldn't want any kind of street cred, because now you have something that you have to get out of, which is a certain mindset, which is a certain behavior pattern that's been distributed to you and been part of your programming. And you have to deprogram yourself in order for you to step outside of that paradox, that maze that you're in. So there we have, dealing with being programmed and being in an assimilation, simulating in assimilation, being assimilating to assimilation, which would be part of, being controlled, and what's controlling you. People that have that mindset and that mentality, they're seeking, I want to say one of three things: either sex, money, drugs, and these things would be intertwined with what a person's pursuit of happiness is, as opposed to us, or a people saying, what, I want peace for all of my people. I want, freedom for all of my people. Freedom from being dictated and things imposed on us. I want freedom for us. That's what I want. No, we just want one of three things. We want sex, money, drugs, but that's outside of food and other things. But that's just one thing we want. We don't really want love. We want the wrong people to love us. We don't really want love itself, the general form of love. We want all the wrong things to love us the way that we want love to be expressed. And that's, it's kind of ironic, because we all love other things. We all love things that are outside of our moral compass, and that creates the imbalance when it comes to loving each other, or loving what needs to be loved. Because you can love something, but that doesn't mean that thing will love you back. You can love a person, but that doesn't mean that person will love you back. And this is the cat and mouse game of love. If we love, all the same way, equally, then love would be distributed in the way that love was intended to be distributed, amongst people. But we become a slave to certain things, and a slave to things is when you actually submit to it. You submit to certain things, and become owned by it. That's when you become a slave to it. We normally submit to our necessity for fashion. We normally submit to our desire to have things, and it's our desire to have things that creates that imbalance. Our desire to have things. And this is something that our mind is telling us we want. Not something that we necessarily need, but something that our mind tell us we want. And these are things that, like I said, we have to tame within us. It comes along with taming the beast. The beast that's within us. And the righteousness tames the beast. I spoke about this. One female said that the righteous man tames the beast. Yes, the righteousness in you tames the wickedness in you. or else the wickedness will control you. That's just how it goes. The righteousness in you, which is in us all, has to tame the wickedness in us, or the wickedness will control us. It's just how it goes. That's no other way around it, But I wanted to share that, because I've seen certain things that needed to be addressed. Farrakhan shouldn't have had stated that. Even if I could pull it up, I'm not sure what she's talking about, but she mentioned me in the comment. I'm not going to check it out because they normally come for me. They normally come for me, man. But this is my cousin that I spoke about before. You know what I mean? And I hit my cousin up. I told you, and you gotta understand. I said, "What's up, cuz?" This is in February. No reply. Yo, cousin Annie. This is my cousin, like my older cousin. We always, we love my cousin Annie. You know what I mean? And like I said, I seen her one day, and she said, you forgot who I was." I'm like, "No, I didn't." And this was prior to me, hitting, trying to hit her up, on this was after this message. You know what I mean? Here you have it here. Maybe she don't have a messenger, but her green light shows up a lot. You know what I mean? And see, she was active 17 hours ago. But, I hit her up. Like, "Yo, cousin." That's my cousin. And she simply doesn't respond. But, she creates this book. It's called "Grief is No Longer the Boss of Me," just in case y'all want to check that out. But this is what I'm saying. When you're, especially when you know that you have a calling, then you're supposed to be accessible. You understand what I'm saying? You have to be accessible and available. You know what I mean? And responsive. If you're responsible, but when she tells you who she is, just yesterday she made a picture. She did her Easter picture, with the bunny, and she's into, Christ, but is she responsive to her cousin in need? You understand? Does she respond to, people that may need something? No, she still hasn't to this day. People could be busy and into whatever it is that they're into. But like I said, I wanted to, ask them certain things, personally about my family. But that's that. But let's see if I could Farrakhan. See if he could because he was saying that something. I mean, not that we need to bring it up, but
Redeemer liveth. I know, I'm not guessing.
You know what I mean?
That my Jesus
Right.
is alive. I know that my Redeemer liveth, and because he lives, yes, sir, I know that I too will pass through the portal of death, yet death will not afflict me. So I say to the devil, I know I gotta pay a price for what I've been teaching all these years. You can have the money, you can have the clothes, you can have the suit, you can have the house. But me, you can't have.
See, you understand? So Farrakhan, that's what I'm saying. He gives you sound wisdom. You know, we got to pass through. You know, a certain, you know, at a point in time, we do leave. You know, but you have to understand that this is just, you know, it's just something we all have to endure. You know what I mean? But he said he has to pay the price for what he's been teaching. You know. And like I said, some of us are conscious of our role in, you know, teaching certain things and being instrumental in certain things, and some of us are not, you know. But yeah, I don't know where that other one is, but that's not the one that I wanted to show you, you know. You know what I mean? That's not the one I wanted to show you. But that's good enough, you know. That's good enough. I mean, you know, that's kind of good enough. We don't need that we have, you know, a regurgitated video, you know, of a person, you know. You know, no. That's what, like I said, that's what you don't need to put your face on a video, you know, as a means of giving it to people, you know, and do all that stuff. These are, you know, these are contrary to, you know, giving sound information. That's contrary to that. That is being self-inclusive in giving that instruction. So it's about you. So if a person see you, you know, doing, you know, this in the video, and see that particular video gets 1 trillion views, then the next person would see something that, ooh, everybody might need to hear that. But, you know, and like I said, because they're doing it like that, people are not actually getting what needs to be got. They're getting the sense of, you know, how can I benefit from giving this information out as well, you know, which becomes a form of recycling and regurgitating, you know, information. And that information don't get reciprocated, and it don't get digested well. It gets looked at, and the person that's sharing it, they get looked at as the person that found that information and shared that information, not as the person that, oh, that person, you know, helped me, that person gave me understanding and wisdom. Nah, that person just went viral just by sharing this clip. Or I'm gonna find a clip that I can share and go viral as well, you know. So, you know, it's a race for people that's in a certain maze and programmed to, you know, accumulate certain things in this reality, to accumulate certain things in this reality, you know. So it's not about healing and helping the people. It's about, you know, helping yourself, you know. It's about helping yourself by sharing things that are already accessible to people, just capitalizing off of something that's already there, you know. It's capitalizing off of stuff that's already right there. It's already in front of people. All you got to do is share it, you know. share it and you get the same response. You really want to help people, just share it. And if there's people that see it and are receptive to it and can benefit from it, they would take that same thing and they would share it as well. So, no. But you know, like I said, I don't, judge these people. I don't, I just call things as I see them, and you don't put any kind of bad, energy behind anything that you're conveying, especially to a people that love bad energy. The bad energy is profitable, and it's something that is generated in or amongst a certain you don't want to say a group of people. You don't want to say a group of people, but it's generated, because of the 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 the, the spirit of it. It burns itself out, so it needs more negativity to keep producing. And like I said, because the darkness is or bad is of the dark needs darkness in order for it to exist. So dark energy and dark matter and all that type of stuff needs more dark matter. Light just exists on the fact that it's light. So light has a light source, and darkness also has a source, but it also needs darkness in order to maintain its darkness. So bad energy has a source, and it needs bad energy to maintain that energy. Bad energy diffuses at the presence of positive energy. Positive news cancels out bad news. Good news cancels out bad news. Good energy cancels out bad energy. Health or healed cancels out sickness. That's just how it goes. You can't be sick and healthy at the same time. This is where you have darkness. Don't fellowship with light. You know, sickness don't reside in the body of the healthy. If a person is sick, he's sick. If a person is healthy, then he's healthy. So sickness and the healthy don't reside within the same body. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. You know, because it needed to be shared. But peace.